Caps are probably one of the items that are a little difficult to stitch on embroidery machine because you're stitching on a circular surface compared to a flat surface. Obviously in a flat surface it's going to be more easy for the machine to stitch, especially when you have a lot of a registration. In a circular surface it's a little bit more complicated, and I want to explain a little bit about caps. First of all, in order to stitch caps you have to follow some rules, okay? The first rule is you cannot exceed your logo more than 2 inches high, okay? So this is your area, this is the safe zone for stitching a cap, 2 inches high. And the other rule that you need to follow is you need to stay away from the bill of the cap, okay? At least half an inch. Here is the most critical area where you can have thread breaks or needle breaks, okay? This area right here. So you want to stay away at least half an inch. If you can do more, better, but half an inch I think it will work just fine, okay? And then you got 2 inches where you can stitch your logo, and this is what we call the safe zone, okay? That's 2 rules that you need to follow, okay? The other rule is that you need to you need to change the needle plate, okay? Regular flat stitching, it's made with a flat needle plate, and then we provide a raised one. Or the purpose of this needle plate is to try to eliminate the gap between the cap and the plate. That is where the major problems came, and I'm going to talk about that in just a few seconds. There are different type of caps, okay? We got the structure cap or baseball cap, you see. This is same. And then we got the unstructured cap, okay? Soft, that we call the soft cap. To my experience, I think that this is the most easy to stitch, the soft ones. It's more easy to handle in the embroidery machine, and normally this cap, you don't have any gaps between the needle plate and the cap. And then we have the hard constructor cap or hard structure cap, which is this one. This is like soft structure cap, and this is like the hard structure cap. This one right here, very stiff cap. The more harder the cap, I think it's the most difficult, because in some caps that I have tried on the machines, some of them they have a huge gap between the needle plate and the cap, and that is where your problem comes, okay? Basically, when you put your cap inside the machine and you notice that you have a gap between the needle plate and the cap, for sure you're going to have needle breaks, thread breaks, and you're going to be a little bit frustrated. Now there are caps available that it's 5-panel cap, like this one. Obviously it's more easy to work with this kind of a caps because we don't have the stitching on the center of the cap. In this area it's very stiff, and sometimes needles have hard time to penetrate this area, and you can see that your embroidery there can lose some quality when you're stitching in the middle of the stitching, or in the middle of this stitch. I recommend to use needle 8012 sharp point. That's what most embroiders use for caps. That you can also use 7511 7511, it's like the needle that it's in the middle. A lot of embroiders call it the universal needle because in the middle you got 8012 and you got 7010. For caps, I think, and I have read on the internet that a lot of people, they're using 8012 sharp point. Okay, that's for the needle, especially for this caps that are very stiff. Okay, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to put this cap right here, which is soft. This is soft. Well, I got my stabilizer right there. Now, as you can see, there's no gap between my needle plate and my cap. I think this cap will stitch pretty good because it fits perfectly in the cap driver and we don't have any gap. Now if I try the structure cap, same thing. No gap at all. Okay, so I think this also will work just fine in the machine. Now let's try the very stiff cap, the hard structure cap, which is this one. You see we got a little gap. It's not a big cap. I mean a big gap, but we have some of them. Okay, that maybe will not cause problems. I have seen more gap, and if you feel like your finger it's bouncing with the cap, you cannot feel the needle plate right away, obviously you have a huge gap there. That will cause a lot of problems. Okay. Basically the ring of the cap driver must be at the closest possible to the arm of the machine. This is the rotary hook arm, this right here, and this is the ring of the cap driver. So if you are like putting the hard constructor cap and you're feeling like you have a lot of gap between the needle plate and the cap, one of my recommendations is to check the area right here. Basically, you can see that this machine has been adjusted to the lowest point, and that helps a lot to eliminate the gap. Now, how do we do this? We put some watchers here. You see this little space right here. Basically, we're loading the cap driver, and also the support. We put some watchers right here in order to load the support of the arm. And the reason is because the Redline machine has the small rotary hook arm. Other machines out there from other brands, they might have the bigger one, and that probably will need a lot of an adjustment. But in this one, since we have the small rotary hook arm, which is very helpful, by the way, when you are stitching small items, that it's when we do this little adjustment in order to move or reduce the space between the ring and the arm. Okay, so the first point that you need to check is how tall your ring is on your machine in order to eliminate the gap. The other thing is the raised needle plate. Change it, the flat to the raised one, because well, obviously the flat will have more space on any cap. This, it's made in order, basically we made this needle plate to eliminate gap. That's the whole idea of that raised needle plate. Another rule that you need to follow on caps, it's your embroidery design. Okay, if the design is not properly digitized, you are going to have lots of problems. It's not just machine, or it's just not thread, or it's just not timing, or it's not just, basically it's a combination of design, machine, thread, cap, everything works together in order to be successful to stitch a cap. And any fabric also, the design is very important. But according to what the expert says, that they say that you have to digitize from the inside to the outside. For example, if you're doing a name, you have to put the letters in the middle, and then maybe the letters on the right side, and then the letters on the left side. Now in this video I want to explain you the area, the safe area or the safe zone for stitching your cap, and explain why you have to leave half an inch right here. You have to stay away from the bill like a half an inch. I want to explain you that. Now basically when you're stitching a cap, this area we call it the safe zone. Okay, this can stitch pretty with no problem. But when you're going close to the bill, the cap has an inclination going up, okay? And that inclination creates gap. We're talking about gap. Well, that here, when you close to the bill, the cap it has an inclination going up. That is the reason why many people has problems when they're stitching very close to the bill. Also, we do have a little resistance between the visor right here. You see how the visor, it's close to this protector. This protector is to protect the picker that grabs the thread when it trims, and we have this little protector, and that protector, well, protects the visor not to hit this picker. Okay, so when you are moving close to the bill, you are putting a little resistance. You see how basically it's the gap that it produced right here because the inclination of the cap. You see. And also here we got part of the hoop, or the round cap hoop metal. Right in here you can feel metal right here. But in order to be successful, I suggest to stay away half an inch, like right here is your limit. So you have to put imaginary line there, not to pass that imaginary line. You cannot be stitching right here. So basically that's one of the things that you need to, or one of the rules that you need to follow. Not stay away half an inch from the bill, and make sure that your logo, it's not higher than 2 inches. Okay, from the side, well, you can stitch right here if you want. It's a 270 degree. We got a frame border error here because I select my hoop limits. You can always change those limits if you go into the gears, frame parameter, and then we got here the frame selection and the hat frame. You select here, and then you can change the values. This first two is for centering the hoop, whatever center you want to play with those values, and here are your limits that you establish in order not to pass some limits on the caps. But you can change right here some values in order for you to go further than that. You can see that that's my limit. There's my limit. I cannot go further than that. But if you want to move a little bit more, you can change the values there, or you can select no hoop. And when you select no hoop, you don't have any limits, but you have to be very careful not to crash the needle like right here, or if you're using regular hoops, not to crash the needle in the hoop. For that reason, we got the trace system, the trace function. You trace your design, you make sure that your design fits inside the hoop, and you're good to go. Okay, now I'm going to do a sample of a cap. I'm going to use this cap, which is a structure cap. I have tested, there's no gap here. I always check here. If I have a gap, like I said, it's maybe it's gonna have a hard time trying to stitch the cap. But no gap, you will see that will stitch pretty easy. I got a design here. It's a football, well, it's a soccer ball logo, and I'm going to put that on the machine. When you stitch caps, I recommend to load the speed. Normally flats you will do it at 800 stitches. I will go to 700. I think 700 is a good speed. You can increase it if you feel that, I mean, you have everything under control. But if you are the first, at least your first design, your first cap, I will suggest you load the speed so you can see how the machine behaves with the cap and everything. Like I said, it's a combination with design, machine, cap system, the cap driver system, everything. It's a combination in order to make the caps possible. Okay, so what I did is I will turn my embroidery mode off, and I select my cap frame. You can select here, select frame, and I got my hat frame. And I will say okay. So it will move. You can see it will move. It will go to the center that has been programmed. If you want to change the values, you can always change it right here. You can change this first two is the center and the other two is the limits. You can always change those. I have right now, if you want to compare with your machine, I have 104.24 for my center and the caps, and for my limits I have 265 and 50 in rectangular. You can change on circular. Obviously you're using circular hoops. Right now we're on rectangular, so you tell the machine you're using rectangular, you say okay, and that's basically your limits. There you go. So now after it's centered, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a trace. Okay, every time you start with new logos, I suggest you every time you do a trace. Okay, like it says here in the sticker, always trace the design. So I will press this icon right here, and then it will give me an option, border check or outline. I always recommend to do outline check. It's more accurate. And let's see how it will work. Okay, so I will do my outline, and then I confirm it, and then I'm in needle number 1. I always do my trace on needle number 1, because if you're needle 8 or 7, you might get confused, and unfortunately the laser it won't work on a cap because you got the visor covers the laser. So let's do it the old style. It's watching needle number 1. So you move your sewing head to needle number 1. Make sure you're on needle number 1 so you can watch the needle and you will not get confused with other needles. Sometimes you are in 4 and you're watching number 5 and your trace will not be accurate. Okay, so right now I'm needle number 1. You can see right here, needle number 1. I'm needle number 1, so I will do my trace, outline check, and then start. So I low a little bit the needle so you can see where the press foot is going to be working, stitching on the cap. Oops. You see I'm not close to the bill. I'm going to do that again. Here he is. I'm not close to the bill. I have like half an inch. I'm away from the bill, which is good. There we go. I always recommend when you do a cap, put a new bobbin. Bobbin doesn't cost much, so just take your bobbin off and put a brand new bobbin into the machine, because that way you don't have to stop, or the machine will stop because you're run out of bobbin. You have to pull the cap out and you can lose some registration. Okay, I will start the embroidery. I will hit the start button. There you go. Okay, I want to stop the machine. I just need to cut these little threads. Okay. Okay, I'm finished. So here's my final product. Very good. As you can see, I'm not close to the bill. I got my 2 inches high logo. I did a hard, no, it's not a hard, it's a structured cap, but it's not that hard as other ones. I didn't use stabilizer. I think you don't require to use stabilizer since, well, it's hard here. Basically, stabilizer, I don't think the stabilizer can be harder than the material they're using right here. So I don't use, but you can use a tearaway backing if you want to. I don't think it will be required, but the book says that you have to put stabilizer on everything in order to get better results. Okay, I didn't use in this in this demonstration, I didn't use stabilizer, and you see I got very good quality logo right there. Okay, that's basically it. Thank you.